back with another video. This is going to be about deadbeat mom of the century, Kelli Bryant, the lady who left her kids in the house for 4 years. She basically abandoned them. So I have updates that we're about to get into. I have this weak-ass family member by marriage that's coming out to say that everybody knew she was a bad mom, but she didn't know it was to this extent. There's people like that needs to go down with her as well, because if y'all knew she was a bad mom, y'all should have reported her to CPS. That's what y'all should have did. But now things come out, you want your few minutes of fame, so you want to talk and get on camera. You failed these kids as well. But overall, she went to court, she got arraigned. She has $250 million bond, which she ain't gonna be able to make. This woman had the nerve to plead not guilty in court. Why are you pleading not guilty, ma'am, when you did this to these kids? But we're gonna get into the stuff, the things that look things. So y'all hang tight, let's go.
Was a bad parent, but I don't think nobody really realized this was going on.
Kelli Bryant is the former sister-in-law to 34-year-old Kelli Bryant, now facing child abuse charges after investigators say they found 3 of her kids living alone in squalor for several years at this Pontiac townhouse on Lydia Lane. Charlene has not been in contact in years and has loads of questions now.
I just don't know how the family don't know when they were so close.
Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald charged Kelli Bryant with 3 counts of child abuse in the first degree, which could mean life in prison if convicted. All of this after police say they found 3 of Bryant's 4 kids, a 15-year-old boy and his 2 sisters, ages 12 and 13, living in horrific conditions.
Her daughters were hiding in a bathroom that was filled with feces, piles of trash, and completely non-functional, while her son was hiding in another room. Police were astonished to find anyone in the location because it appeared to be uninhabitable, with piles of garbage and refuse several feet high, including...
He's according to the prosecutor.
Honestly, I thought the grandmother was taking care of the children.
That's the last you heard?
Yeah, that's the last. You went 4 or 5 years without seeing your grandchildren. There was no questions.
We stopped by the Pontiac home of Bryant's extended family, where the police eventually took the kids. We wanted to talk to the adults. Hi, how are you?
No, sir, no comment.
Is there anything you'd like to say, sir? No comment given there. We also searched Bryant's Facebook page, which was easy to find and not set to private. Her content shows her modeling various outfits for the camera.
She's gonna claim she couldn't afford to take care of her kids, but you got your hair done, you got your nails done, you got new clothes on all your pictures. Come on now.
What do you think should happen at this point?
She needs to go to prison and never see her kids again. Them kids need to go to someone that's gonna take care of them.
Okay. All right, back on the record with the Kelli Bryant matter. For the record, Ms. Kerrigan, I know you've had an opportunity to go into a private confidential breakout room to confer with your client regarding the charges in this matter. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor, I did.
And are you waiving the reading of the general information and complaint this morning?
Yes, Your Honor, waive reading, stand mute, ask the judge to not guilty plea on her behalf. I did advise her of the nature of the offenses, the maximum possible penalties, as well as gave her basic constitutional rights.
All right, this matter is hereby assigned to Honorable Judge Cynthia Walker. She will be back before her on for a probable cause conference March 4, 2025, for a probable cause conference with an exam date set for March 11, 2025. Ms. Bryant, that exam date is a tentative date depending upon everyone's schedule, but by the court rule we have to set a date to keep it going. That will be at 9 o'clock. The PCC, the probable cause conference, is at 1:30. Of course, if you're unable to retain an attorney, the court-appointed attorney will be provided for you to help you navigate and to communicate before Judge Walker on your next court date in this matter. Pretrial services relative to bond, but for the record, Ms. Kerrigan, are you in receipt of the pretrial services report bail recommendation in this matter?
Your Honor, and I did discuss it with my client.
Okay, all right.
I am, yes.
Okay, and have you read and reviewed that?
I did do that in the breakout room, Your Honor. Sorry, there's a lot of feedback, I think, from the jail screen. I think that's our problem right now.
Yeah, our problem is
But yes,
from the
I
jail
did review
screen.
it, and I talked to her.
Okay, all right, so they're recommending release with conditions in this matter. So we're gonna go from there. We have the PCC date. I'm gonna have you speak to bond, and then I'll make my decision as to bond. And I'll also have prosecution speak to bond. Ms. Carragano, you're asking the court to accept the recommendation as provided by pretrial services?
I am, Your Honor. MCR 6.106, if you go through those conditions, provide that a personal recognizance bond with any conditions should be provided unless Ms. Bryant fell under some of the very specified exceptions to a personal bond that are listed. The court can also provide a cash bond if the court finds that Ms. Bryant is either a risk to the community or a flight risk. This particular case is serious, and we're not denying that it's a very serious case. However, I don't believe that the facts and circumstances of the case give any indication that Ms. Bryant is a risk to the community at large. In addition to that, there is no indication that Ms. Bryant is a flight risk. She's a lifelong resident of the county. She was residing within the city limits of this community. She, was employed, and she has ties to the community. In speaking to her, she also is asking that the court consider a tether, which could be part of a bond if the people had any concerns that she posed a flight risk. I do think, the recommendation from pretrial services is in line with the Michigan court rules, understanding that it is a very serious offense. But the court rules are what they are, and they do provide that Ms. Bryant should be released on a personal bond with conditions, so that's what I'm asking the court to do.
Ms. Green, would you like to address the court regarding bond in this matter?
Thank you, Your Honor. I did have the opportunity to look at the pretrial services report. I know, Your Honor, just swear to facts yesterday, and that those are fresh in your memory, so I will
I'm
not.
going to mute the jail. I'm going to mute the jail camera, and go ahead, Ms. Green.
Thank you. I did have the opportunity to review the pretrial services report. I know that Your Honor just listened to the swear to facts yesterday, and I'm sure that those are fresh in your memory. I am requesting in this case, I do agree with Ms. Kirandango regarding MCR 6.106 to the extent that you may not deny bond, but this court has the authority to put in place a high cash bond with conditions. And I believe that it appears that Ms. Bryant is not employed, and that her resident status may be transient. So I consider her, and I think that the facts of this case portray her as a potential flight risk, and that there are 3 victims in this case that she should absolutely be prohibited from having contact with. So I'd ask that the court add a specific no contact provision as it relates to the 3 minor victims in this case. And if the court would like me to go on, I can.
No. What I found very suspicious in the report of pretrial services, there's 2 different addresses given to her. So I agree with you, Ms. Green, that one could opine that she's transient. She's from here, she's from there. We don't know where she resides. I do find her an acute risk and danger to the community and to any minor children under the age of 18, let alone the 3 minor children that she is a mother to. With that in mind, I agree with Ms. Carragano. I cannot deny her bond. That is court, of course. My first knee-jerk reaction was to deny her bond. However, because I find her acute danger, I find her a continued danger to the children. My main concern is, I don't know who, if anyone, that the children have been given to. If it is a family member, I'm concerned that she still may have contact with the family member from the jail with instructions to continue to engage in the fear tactics to forbid the children from cooperating with authorities in their continued investigation in this matter. For that reason alone, I'm giving her a $250 million bond in this matter, cash only. The other aspects, should she post that bond, she is not to have any contact with these children by family members, third-party agents, or friends. So, Ms. Bryant, I want you to understand, any phone calls from the jail, should you're unable to post this bond, is recorded. Should the court find out that you are sending messages to engage in further fear tactics and intimidation of the children, your phone privileges will be removed. You're not to have, in fact, any contact, should you post this bond, with any children under the age of 18. In this matter, if you post this bond, you should be supervised by pretrial services, no alcohol or drugs, no weapons or firearms, and a GPS tether with a verified address, because I'm concerned pretrial services has indicated 2 different reported addresses for you. I don't believe anyone knows where you have been staying, madam. There's no consistent history. Anything further regarding the bond, Ms. Caragongo, Ms. Green?
Your Honor, just ever so briefly, they had no issues finding my client to arrest her. So I just want the record to be clear on that.
Ms. Green?
Your Honor, you have before you information that the defendant has been lying about her whereabouts, the whereabouts regarding what she was telling where the children were. So you have a lot on this record in terms of inconsistencies with her location and the information that she's given to put in place this high cash bond.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your cooperation in this matter. Ms. Bryant, you are thanked and excused from the camera. Ms. Caragongo, Ms. Green, thank you so much. Pretrial service, thank you so much. Ma'am, can you get up and let the deputies know we're ready for the next defendant? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That judge didn't want her no way around her. She wanted her to hurry up, get up out that scene, get the hell up from around her. She wanted to fill her head all. That's why she said her had $250,000 bond, $50 million bond. My bad. But I just want to say you have to be like a detached individual, emotionalist, to do things like this to a child, especially one that you birthed and came out of
together.
Good afternoon. First, I'd like to announce that we have authorized 3 charges of first-degree child abuse against Kelli Bryant, a 34-year-old resident of Pontiac. My office has already advised the court in the neglect proceedings that we will be asking to terminate the defendant's parental rights. In every case of child abuse, my office focuses first and foremost on the best interest of the child or children and on holding those responsible for abuse accountable. The 3 children in this case suffered unimaginable abuse and neglect over a long period of time. Thankfully, they've now been rescued from that, and our first priority has been and will continue to be their safety and well-being. I want to briefly address, though, why we're here. Since the first announcement over the weekend by the sheriff, this case has captured the attention of the people across our community, our county, our state, and even internationally, because people are rightfully concerned about the welfare of these children. And we're holding this press conference because, like all other decisions, we balance the interests of public safety, media attention and inquiries, and balancing everyone's right to a fair trial, which is why the events and facts that are disclosed here today are strictly confined to what's already been placed on the record in the swear-to this morning in the 50th District Court. When their circumstances became public, including the photos of the home, although law enforcement did not identify the defendant, she was quickly identified on social media and also has been reported in other news media outlets, which is why we are naming her today. We have recently, luckily, been fortunate enough to, for the first time ever, hire our public information officer, Jeff Watrick, who's in the back of the room. Many of you have already spoken to and will continue to, and we're lucky to have him. The children are currently staying with a relative. All 3 children received immediate medical attention at a local hospital, and they were interviewed by trained forensic interviewers at Care House. Considering what they've experienced, they appear to be doing okay. Obviously, the trauma here is significant, and my office, including our victim services section, will make sure these children are supported during this process. Today, the charges are 3 counts of child abuse in the first degree. This is the most serious charge for child abuse, and if convicted, Ms. Bryant could face a sentence of up to life in prison. In the swear-to this morning, on the record, it was stated that in 2019, suspect Kelli Bryant was living at the home, which I'm not disclosing the address at this time, in Pontiac, Michigan, with her 4 children. At some point between 20 and 2021, the suspect moved out of her home, leaving 3 of her children abandoned in that location, while 1 of her children went to live with their father. On February 14th, 2025, police were called to the home by the landlord. Police learned that the landlord was concerned for the welfare of Ms. Bryant, who had not paid rent on the property since October of 2024. Discovered her 3 children, ages 12, 13, and 15. Her daughters were hiding in a bathroom that was filled with feces, piles of trash, and completely non-functional, while her son was hiding in another room. Police were astonished to find anyone in the location because it appeared to be uninhabitable, with piles of garbage and refuse several feet high, including large amounts of human excrement. The children were afraid to come out of their hiding places and to speak with the police. Police had to repeatedly advise the children that they were there to help and they were safe. The children's bodies and clothing were covered in feces, and the girls had difficulty physically walking outside of the residence. In addition to the physical difficulty, they appeared to be and were immediately overstimulated upon leaving the residence. All 3 children were transported via ambulance to the hospital and showed signs of severe neglect. At the hospital, the children struggled with completing basic hygiene tasks like flushing a toilet and brushing their teeth because they had not done it in years. The children were forensically interviewed and described having virtually no physical contact with their mother, suspect Bryant, or the outside world in several years. The girls had not left the residence in several years, and her son had only left the home to go into the yard approximately 2 times, never venturing away from the house more than to check the mailbox. During his interview, her son stated that he would text their mother when their food supply was running low and she would have food delivered to the residence. The children shared that during the years they were concealed in the home, their suspect Bryant failed to provide toilet paper, soap, or shampoo. The defendant instructed the kids that they were not to answer the door or leave the house. All 3 children expressed fear about what their mother's response would be if they left the home. Defendant concealed the children from family and friends and lied about who was caring for the kids and their whereabouts. The defendant took the active steps of lying and concealing to make sure the children went undiscovered, and she took these actions knowing that her children would suffer serious physical and emotional harm as a result. Those are the statements made in the swear-to this morning. And again, these are allegations. I do want to point out and thank all the officers that were on scene that day. I personally viewed the videos and images and was struck at what a difficult situation it was, but in the face of that difficulty, offered compassion to these kids. I also want to thank Detective John Brish and Lieutenant Sam Marsban for their dedication in working this case, and of course the assistant prosecutors involved, Chief of Administration Betsy Haig, Chief of our SVU Sarah Green, APA Lauren Benninger, Chief of the Juvenile Division Kelly Collins, and APA Kanika Ferenczi for their diligent efforts in this case. At present, we've not been presented with a request for criminal charges against any other individuals. That does not mean that won't happen in the future. I just can't speak to it at this point. Morally, there is plenty of responsibility to go around for how this was allowed to happen. However, these 3 kids were entrusted to the care of their mother, Kelli Bryant, and the evidence suggests that she effectively abandoned them to a revolting pit of refuse and squalor. Evidence suggests that she effectively abandoned them to a revolting pit of refuse and squalor. There must be consequences for those actions. The defendant is presently in custody. The 3 children in this case were interviewed at Care House. and I want to emphasize how important Care House is to this community. These kids were interviewed in a safe environment by an experienced, trained forensic interviewer, and these interviews are important in all child abuse cases. They allow each child the chance to tell us their story without the influence of the abuser and without using leading questions that could taint their testimony. I can't emphasize enough how important Care House is. If you suspect a child is abused or neglected, you too can report this to CPS. The hotline is 855-444-3911. And I urge anyone who suspects that a child is being abused or neglected to report that using that number. We need to make sure that every child is safe and well cared for. And before I take questions, I just want to remind you that these charges, again, are only allegations, and the defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. Questions?
Not having been to the area, neighbors, anybody? I mean, I think what maybe people struggle with is how intimidated by their mother, yes, but how they could not even venture out of the home, or just nobody knowing that they were there. Or can you add context into, how that can happen?
I can only comment on what's been placed on the record. That's my ethical duty. But I will say that we see time and time again, victims of severe abuse of all ages make decisions that don't seem reasonable to us. And what we know is that's very common. And there's a multitude of reasons why they didn't leave the home. We just don't know that yet. Yes?
Have prosecutors or deputies interviewed the fathers of the children?
They have, yes.
Multiple fathers or one father?
I think it's already public record that of the 4 kids, there are 2 fathers.
Prosecutor McDonald,
yes.
What stands out about this case to you? I mean, it's a pretty significant child abuse case.
That's a difficult question and a really good question. I said yesterday, and I've said this to the sheriff personally, we say a lot, this is the worst I've ever seen. And I've stopped saying that because every time I say that, I see something worse. It was unbelievable what they were living with for years. Unbelievable. It wouldn't be surroundings where you would want any living creature living in. Creature or animal, or particularly human beings. I mean, these kids, not to have even basic hygiene tools. And I guess what stands out the most for me is no love. There was nobody there to care for them for between 3 and 4 years. No parent, nobody physically present to let them know that they were safe and they were loved. Yes?
Did she have any prior contact with CPS or a prior criminal record?
I can't comment on that.
Okay.
Is she being held on any outstanding charges, or is it just on this and then she'll be arraigned tomorrow?
We are not aware of any other holds or matters that she would be held under. At this moment, she's being held because of these pending charges. Now they're official, and she'll be arraigned, I believe, tomorrow.
Can you provide more context, appreciating what you said about, you mentioned that he would text his mother, one of the older boy. So he had access to a phone apparently, but...
All the children had access to the phones. They all had their own phones.
So would they see her? I've read an account that maybe she dropped some food off weekly, or can you talk about how they survived if they didn't leave the home, how often she came, and where she was staying?
There was no, according to the evidence that's been placed on the record, there was no physical contact whatsoever. And I don't think it's accurate to say that they had food dropped off weekly. Sometimes, right. Sometimes it was longer than that.
But
and
she was the one distributing?
No, not all the time.
Okay.
Not all the time.
And you had said the restroom was not, is that what you said? The restroom was not maybe properly functioning in there, but do we know if there was heat or air conditioning in the summer?
I don't have that. That has not been put on the record, but I do not believe that there was. I believe there was heat enough so that the children were at least able to live there. If not, as you know, given the cold temperatures, there would have been signs of freezing to death.
Where was she staying?
I don't have that information, not there.
And obviously you've charged her, so she thinks she's, I'm assuming then obviously there's competence. So not that there's ever a reason for something of this horrific nature, but any inferences to the why that she just decided to abandon her kids beyond, some may think mental issues, but obviously not if you're charging her.
Right. Without commenting particularly on this case, as the prosecutor over the last over 4 years, you know, I've been asked, and I hear repeatedly that question on all of the terrible, violent, atrocious acts that we see, the why, and the answer is we don't know why. We can't get in the mind of somebody else, but we do know what the evidence shows, and we have the law, and nobody who is not found competent can stand trial. So I can't comment on that right now, but just to say that sometimes there isn't a why. Yes.
Is there any evidence to suggest that their substance abuse may have been involved or anything?
I can't comment on that.
Has mom been cooperative?
The defendant has an absolute right to remain silent, so any comment I would make on whether or not she's spoken to the police would be a violation of her rights.
Thank you.
Longer term, can you share what the plan is for the children? And some may wonder if family have taken them in now, how they didn't know about, I'm not trying to assess blame by asking, but you know, where were they prior? How did they not know? You know,
right.
I mean, there are a lot of questions, obviously.
Good question. And the thing that I want to stress here is that we are responsible for prosecuting all of the criminal cases in this county. We're also responsible for representing the Department of Health and Human Services in child abuse and neglect proceedings. So we are simultaneously prosecuting the criminal case against mom and the neglect proceeding pertaining to the kids. So we will be asking our client, the Department of Health and Human Services, to file a petition to terminate her rights. So there's just a lot we can't really get into, except I do want to say that our client, the Department of Health and Human Services, their number one priority is the care and welfare of children, and wherever they are placed, they do their due diligence to make sure that is a safe placement. And all I can say is that those questions were asked and obviously satisfied. And the other thing I want to say is there's been such an outpouring in this community, but I would just stress that in the effort to take care of these kids, that we also protect their privacy. And Pontiac, if those of you who don't know, it's a small place and everybody knows everybody, and any outrage is totally understandable, but we want to do as much as we can to protect their placement so that they are protected.
But to be clear, they are not wards of the state. They are with family.
They are in the care and custody of the Department of Health and Human Services, and they are placed through DHHS with a relative placement. Yes, the custody remains with DHHS until otherwise determined by the court. And again, those are two different proceedings. Yes, that we are, there was a preliminary hearing yesterday, and we'll continue to provide information about that as that moves along.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Story, a judge setting the bond at $250 million for the woman accused of abandoning her children in a Pontiac home.
This is a story we've been following since Sunday when we first found out about the heartbreaking investigation.
Kelli Bryant facing a judge today, the 34-year-old appearing via Zoom in Pontiac's 50th District Court. The judge calling Bryant a danger to the community.
She is accused of leaving her 15-year-old son and her 12 and 13-year-old daughters alone since March of 2020. The children were discovered living in horrendous conditions.
7 News Detroit reporter Sarah Michaels listened in on that arraignment and is outside the home where that alleged abuse took place in Pontiac.
We have spent most of this afternoon outside of this home where 3 children were allegedly abandoned for nearly 5 years. We are told that they were living among mold, feces, and piles of trash up to 4 feet, 5 feet tall, some of which we just saw carried out a few moments ago.
Feces all over the place.
Soiled mattresses, moldy couches, dozens of pizza boxes, and trash, all being pulled out of this Pontiac home almost a week after 3 children were discovered living here. It is alleged that 34-year-old Kelli Marie Bryant abandoned 3 of her children here back in 2020. A boy and 2 girls, now 15, 13, and 12. Presumably 10, 8, and 7 at the time of their abandonment. They were finally found Friday during a wellness check for Bryant. According to the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, Bryant would drop off food periodically and threaten the children to never leave or answer the door. For nearly 5 years, we're told that they had no hygiene products. With the door and windows now open, you can smell the filth inside this home from the sidewalk.
I find her a continued danger to the children.
Bryant is now in jail facing 3 counts of first-degree child abuse. In court Thursday, she was given a $250 million cash bond. The judge saying that she doesn't believe anyone knows where Bryant herself was truly living at the time of this abuse, and that Bryant should have no contact with her own children or anyone under the age of 18.
I'm concerned that she still may have contact with a family member from the jail with instructions to continue to engage in the fear tactics to forbid the children from cooperating with authorities.
The sheriff has told us that Bryant's 3 children have received treatment from Care House in Pontiac this week. Care House is an incredible local nonprofit that provides treatment for children who are victims of abuse. Stay with us because coming up in an hour at 6, we are taking you inside Care House. Reporting in Pontiac, Sarah Michaels, 7 News Detroit.
$150 million cash bond saying she is a danger to the community and any children, her children, now receiving treatment from the nonprofit Care House of Oakland County.
7 News Detroit reporter Sarah Michaels takes us to that facility, showing us how advocates are working on the front lines for children.
This is our forensic interview room. We have 3 forensic interview rooms here at Care House.
Inside this bright, warm building that is Care House of Oakland County is where the 3 Pontiac children, abandoned in filth and grime, have been receiving treatment.
Law enforcement first calls us and sets up the interview so that that child can come to a safe place and be able to tell their experience.
Here, children are given a safe space to pick out a stuffed animal, play, and share their trauma. It is the first step in working through years of abuse. The Oakland County Sheriff's Department tells us the 3 Pontiac children, ages 15, 13, and 12, spent nearly 5 years of their life alone with no hygiene products, no access to education, or a parent's love.
There are things called failure to thrive. With neglect comes a lot of different ramifications on how well they learn, how well they are able to talk, how well they're able to function.
It has been nearly 1 week since the children were found inside this Pontiac home during a wellness check for their mother. Maintenance contractor Omar Tame tells me he was there as horrified officers opened this door.
Seeing the condition of the house, there was feces everywhere. And all we could just hear him saying, oh my God, you know.
He says that he watched as officers had to push aside 4 feet piles of mold, trash, and feces to find the children inside.
And then we heard some kids sound like they were crying. And when the kids came down, you know, they escorted them out. They couldn't even walk. They never seen outside in years.
What did the kids' hair look like? Their hygiene, could you tell?
Well, their hair was very matted. It didn't even look like hair. It looked like fur. It was very, very scary.
We're told that the children's mother, 34-year-old Kelli Marie Bryant, would periodically drop off food and told the children to never answer the door or leave the home. Care House tells me it is frequently fear from an authority figure that keeps a child from seeking help. It will take time and treatment for these children to recover from this unimaginable abuse. But Care House tells me it is possible.
What is the hope? Children are amazingly resilient. You'll see children come out of horrific situations and they seem to be blossoming. It's not that they blossom right away, it's that they blossom because they've been given those resources and they learn that they are important. They learn that what happened to them was not okay.
In Pontiac, Sarah Michaels, 7 News Detroit.
Sarah, thank you so much.
With more, Will. Kelli Bryant, I should say, is facing the most serious charge for child abuse, first-degree child abuse. Say the kids who lived at that house lived in fear of their mother. They had been cut off from the outside world for years.
Bryant is facing child abuse charges, accused of leaving 3 of her kids to basically fend for themselves at a home in Pontiac. Police say they found a 15-year-old boy and 2 girls, ages 12 and 13. County prosecutor Karen McDonald says Bryant moved out of the home around 2020 or 2021, leaving 3 children at the location. When the food supply ran low, McDonald says the son would text Bryant and food would be delivered. Police say they were called to the home on Valentine's Day for a welfare check because of missed rent payments.
McDonald says the 3 children are staying with family right now. Coming up at